From deeply uncomfortable storyline developments to horrible attempts to recapture the magic of old. These are those times when fans had no choice but to question what in the flying fudge Vince, Trips, and the rest of the folks calling the WWE shots were thinking. Gareth here from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 times we couldn't figure out what the F WWE was thinking. Number 10. JBL vs Godzilla. JBL thought the best way to keep from having to fight the Big Show inside of a barbed wire steel cage at No Way Out 2005 was to shoot the Giants with a tranquilizer gun on SmackDown. So far, so sports entertainment, I guess. One thing led to another, the champ ended up being blasted instead, and a supposedly disorientated JBL then proceeded to wander around backstage and pick fights with inflatable dinosaurs. And with this particular edition of the Blue Show going down in Japan, someone clearly thought it would be a hilarious move to have the heelish out-of-sorts Bradshaw and begin referencing how the folks in attendance who eat noodles were scared of the big lizard. Oh boy. You can literally hear Vince McMahon erupting with glee and gorilla at the sight of JBL stripping down to his pink undies, as an unsure audience can't decide whether to awkwardly laugh or boo the surreal scenario. Of course, the entire thing turned out to be little more than a ruse designed to catch Show off guard, but not even an admittedly ferocious giant toppling of JBL's cabinet could keep folks from wondering how this deeply unfunny show-long sketch managed to make it past the pitching stage on the road to WrestleMania 21. Number 9. Big Boss Man steals Big Show's daddy. Things had gotten personal between Show and then rival Big Boss Man, with the pair engaging in a rivalry over Show's recently deceased father that involved Boss Man infamously reciting a poem containing such touching words as, "He lived his own life on his own terms, soon he'll be buried and eaten by worms." I'd say you can't write this stuff, but there it is. But that hugely uncomfortable moment absolutely paled in comparison to the outrageous visual of the sunglasses-wearing villain taking it upon himself to invade the eventual kayfabe funeral for the Giants' paps. In reality, Show's father had actually died a few years earlier. Does that make the shot of the Titanic grieving son hanging onto his kayfabe dad's coffin as Bossman speeds off with it chained to his vehicle any less bizarre and disturbing to behold though? You already know the answer, don't you? It was just plain car crash telly. Oh, I'm so disappointed in myself. Number 8. So much of NXT 2.0. The black and gold dreariness found on Tuesday nights in the months before September 2021 was a far cry from the once exciting home of one-time independent sensations and can't miss main roster stars of tomorrow. But there's freshening up the place a touch, and then there's ejaculating multicolored splats all over the performance center, and debuting a new collection of very much green caricatures not in any way ready for weekly episodic wrestling TV. Instead of creating a show designed for those die-hard fans that had now seemingly decided their time was in safer hands over with Tony Khan and his team, Vince McMahon and co took charge and unleashed a campy, sex-obsessed and often cartoonish raw-light developmental product that was apparently designed to appeal to those horny youngsters out there. Surprisingly, it did not. Who knew that a bunch of out-of-touch creepy old men had next to no idea what the younger demographic actually wanted to see on their screens in 2022, eh? Number 7. Super CENA conquers a returning beast. The face that runs the place was dealt a little WrestleMania main event loss against the Great One that would ultimately be cancelled out a year later anyway. However, despite this still being John Bloody Cena, WWE clearly felt that their golden boy was in desperate need of a boost post-Rocky defeat. So the absolutely illogical call was made to have Big Match John go over a returning Brock Lesnar at Extreme Rules. It didn't matter that the Beast was stepping back into a WWE ring for the first time in nearly a decade, and since becoming a damn UFC heavyweight champion, John clearly required the victory more than the returning monster who was riding a sea of undeniable momentum. Sure enough, Brock instantly felt like less of a big deal out of the gates, and it took a solid year or so to re-establish his frightening aura. Cena's shocking win also didn't exactly transform him into any more of a star than he already was going into their Extreme Rules war. A decade on, this dumb booking call is still as baffling today as it was back then. Number 6. Drake Maverick wets himself. Survivor Series 2018 is remembered for a few things. The battle between Brock Lesnar and Daniel Bryan, Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair's war, and the just plain awkward visual of Drake Maverick pissing his pants in front of a packed arena. I would ask who this was honestly for, but you already know precisely what section of the audience the cackling billionaire was aiming this at. Himself and the rest of his childish gang of boys in the back. If the idea of Maverick having to set off a weeing contraption in his pants already wasn't embarrassing enough for you though, the reality of the one-time 205 Live general manager actually having to legit wet his pants after it broke took this to a whole other level of humiliating. But sure enough, Trips, Road Dogg and Vince reportedly got a kick out of Drake's pissy antics. And how did they reward his commitment to the company? By letting him go not once but twice as an on-screen talent in the years that followed. Nice! Number 5. A kid walks out of WrestleMania with a tag title. If you'd have told anyone inside of New Orleans Superdome that in 5 years' time those straps won by Braun Strowman and a child would sit as arguably the second most important belt in the company, they likely would have given you the same look Cesaro and Sheamus gave Nicholas after he stepped into the ring at Mania 34. Now there's no denying that gifting said son of referee John Cone this once-in-a-lifetime moment was rather sweet in said moment, and it likely left an entire generation of young WWE fans dreaming of the day they could also follow in the mighty Nicholas's footsteps. But once the dust had settled on what was pretty much the one-man conquering of the multiple-time Raw Tag Team Champions, the reality of the damage that had been done to the credibility of the belts began to set in. Braun and his kid teammates then having to relinquish the straps due to the latter having to go back to school only made the entire thing feel that little more pointless, with WWE clearly valuing a surreal WrestleMania moment over having a tag division you should actually give a toss about. Number 4. A referee stoppage inside Hell in a Cell. The sadistic structure known as Hell in a Cell is about the most brutal and merciless environment you will ever find yourself in the middle of as a WWE superstar. Or rather, that's what the company have repeatedly tried their best to make you believe over the last few years. But the slightly less hellacious matches can usually still be counted on for a definitive conclusion to a rivalry. Not at 2019's Hell in a Cell though. Not by a long shot. After taking it to Bray Wyatt's clownish fiend horror movie monster throughout their red light filtered war, Seth Rollins' relentless curb stomps, chair shots to the head, burying of the masked entity under a mountain of weapons, and vicious sledgehammer shot to the downed being led to the no-holds-barred match being bizarrely just stopped. Apparently there was a limit to the hell that was allowed to go down in this cell, between the annoying red hue that made much of the action borderline unwatchable, and the post-match attack on Rollins from the resurgent fiend that played out to chants of AEW. The words hilarious disaster don't quite do justice to whatever WWE was trying to achieve right here. Number 3. The 2022 Royal Rumble matches. Few will ever forget the moments Vince McMahon took what had once been an almost impossible to mess up concept and proceeded to seemingly do everything he could to put frowns on fans' faces. Many a legendary face was unceremoniously made to look like a loser during the Women's Royal Rumble, with Melina, Ivory and Mighty Molly lasting less than a minute each, but at least that titular bout came equipped with some welcome surprises. The men's iteration perhaps ranks as the absolute worst version of the match of all time, with everything from Shane McMahon trying to hijack the entire bout, to Brock Lesnar rocking up at number 30 to walk out with his second Rumble victory, producing groans around the globe. Instead of leaving fans salivating at the thought of the dream matches to come, a visibly pissed off babyface Ronda Rousey beating out Sasha Banks, Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair to seal her Mania title match, and Brock setting up yet another Roman war at the show of shows, looked like an unwise call on the night. And the entire evening proceeded to age like a pint of milk by the time Trips actually booked a Rumble worth shouting about a year later. Honestly, it really is harder to mess up a Rumble, but boy does Vince love a challenge. Number 2. John Cena, This Is Your Life. Should WWE somehow capture a magnificent bit of lightning in a bottle and produce a segment of wrestling television that will forever go down in history as one of the greatest, you can almost guarantee the company will persist on trying to recapture said bolt of electricity down the road. And sure enough, when it comes to The Rock's legendary This Is Your Life bit opposite Mankind many moons ago, WWE have seemingly made it their mission to prove Rocky's sensational blasts from the past weren't just a fluke. Sadly though, if Alexa Bliss's god-awful Bayley version of the concept wasn't enough evidence to prove this masterful moment should have been left well enough alone, John Cena's own uncomfortably bad This Is Your Life celebration during the early stages of his rivalry with the Great One definitely was. Cena wasn't the only one who could sense this wasn't exactly a good idea throughout. Sickly sweet recap packages of his life, an awkward sob story spewing former tag partner Bull Buchanan, and John Cena Sr. telling the audience they sucked more than his son, all quickly cemented this as a skit everyone involved and watching on visibly wanted nothing to do with. WWE, or more specifically Vince, no doubt felt this would be a humiliating hoot from start to finish. But the only moment that genuinely popped the crowd was Rocky's late rock bottoming of his poor former tag pal Mick Foley. What a mess, eh? Number 1. Roman doesn't let Cody finish the story. The decision not to pull the trigger on Cody Rhodes' finishing of the story at WrestleMania 39 already feels like one of the most perplexing WWE calls of all time. Yes, I know recency bias is a thing, but I stand by it. They had a ready-made megastar just waiting to be crowned in the American American nightmare, with the one-time AEW EVP looking and feeling every bit like the company's new face heading into the show of shows. Will there ever be a more perfect moment where momentum and destiny collide in the main event on the grandest stage in front of 80,000 plus people? Well, maybe. Yet history tells the story of WWE unquestionably benefiting from committing to the future today on the Mania stage. Steve Austin, John Cena, Batista, Becky Lynch. The timing was undeniably right for each of those names to reach the top of the damn mountain, and simply having them fall on the most important night of their careers wouldn't have left audiences gearing up for their redemption arcs. It would have just left them feeling entirely drained and disenchanted by the whole ordeal. Rhodes may yet get the belt his paps never won, but there's no questioning that WWE's decision not to finish the epic story in LA was about as baffling as they come. And that's our list of any other times people couldn't figure out what the F WWE was thinking. Let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, if you like this kind of stuff, then please head on over to whatculture.com and find some more fantastic articles just like the one this video you're watching right now is based on. I've been the person you can't figure out, known as Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you very much for watching this lovely video today, and hopefully I'll see your faces rather soon. Bye bye!